Jadzia Dax says the bunks on the USS Defiant are so uncomfortable. Captain Sisko is trying to cut down on his Ractigino intake. And even with a micro lathe, Chief O'Brien isn't sure he'll have Molly's dollhouse finished in time for her birthday. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, everybody.
We also have a very special guest today. He's a writer of science fiction and some Star Trek episodes you may know, Mr. Ethan Calk.
How's it going, everybody?
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today, we're doing a review of Deep Space Nine's Season 5, Episode 22, Children of Time, teleplay by Renee Echevarria, story by Gary Holland, and what do you know, Mr. Ethan Calk. How you guys doing?
Yep. Great.
All right. Gary Holland, huh?
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because there used to be a PR press guy that worked on the show with us, and he was up in the offices, and
might have been
he
him
would
then.
do all. I don't think so. I don't know if he did any writing for the show, but I used to visit him all the time. Shout out to Gary Holland, good guy. I don't know if it's the same one.
I have heard of people that were on the staff other places pitching a story here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible, maybe.
Well, actually, yeah. Ethan, walk us through that a little bit, because there are two of you that have the story by credit.
Mm-hmm.
So you were saying that you kind of got credit for different parts of the story, right? Different aspects. So what's that about?
Right. My pitch was the going back in 200 years and meeting their descendants. That was my pitch. They liked it a lot and they bought it, but they also said they had this pitch of a story, and it was the Odo and Kira kind of romance developing and him being able to express it for the first time. And so they liked both of them, but they didn't know how to incorporate it until they heard my pitch, and they said, oh, we'll do it with the descendants in the past like that. And so that's kind of how they came together, and never met him. We never worked together. It's just two totally separate pitches that they bought and put together in one story.
Yeah. So it's entirely possible that it's your guy, Cirroc. Like maybe he just kind of was like, hey, what do you guys think about Kira and Odo? I think, it's something like that. And, they just kind of pieced that together.
It's funny because I'm now looking this up, and it was that same Gary Holland.
Wow. That's so cool.
Very cool. I didn't know that at all.
Yeah, so Gary, like I said, here it's listed that he was the vice president and executive director of Paramount Domestic Television Advertising and Promotion. So I used to hang out at his office a lot and get a lot of free, cool merchandise and stuff,
Oh, you've mentioned that before, right? You've gotten some cool stuff, like some toys and some action figures and whatnot, right?
Yeah, so anytime I wanted to, just burn some time and kind of chat with some of the guys up in the offices, I would be in these different areas of Paramount Television, advertising, promotion, the marketing. I was in these very specific locations where they were all separated, but Gary was one of them, and he had an office by the blue screen at Paramount Pictures. They had this big blue sky. That's right there when you first enter the place. But Gary was a very good guy. I heard that he went on to work for TNT later on, but I had no idea that he was actually a Star Trek fan. And on top of that he was actually pitching episodes for our show. So this is new to me. I just know him as the advertising and promotion guy.
It's like he also got some writing credits for The Collaborator. I think that was a season 4 episode, a Vedic Barile episode. And Ethan, before we forget, I do want to point out that another one of your writing credits, which was really cool for me, was don't tell
me.
Visionary, right? And the reason I like that one is because that's the one where O'Brien is seeing like a future self or something like that, right? And that is the one that for our reviews, I'm the most proud of the title I came up with with the review. I try to come up with these clever things and it usually fails, but this was the one where I was like, I got a good one. And so it's like he's seeing himself like in the future. So I called it seeing miles ahead. Like,
yeah. Oh,
and then ever since then, I've been trying to chase that one and trying to come up with something as clever. And I haven't been like, I was like, this is the start of something good. And nope, it was just the only clever one I could come up with. So,
that's cool.
So thanks for that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty good. Yeah. That's, we're all just learning new things right now. This is amazing. This is bringing us all up. So Ryan, now that you bring that episode up and in correlation with this episode, my question originally, the first thing that comes to my mind is time travel and the common theme of time travel kind of, so Ethan, maybe you can talk about, your fascination with time travel or why you chose to kind of highlight these kinds of subjects.
I don't know. I've always liked time travel. They're kind of, if I ever see a movie on somewhere that says time travel, I'll watch it. I don't know, just the weird possibilities that can happen. Now I pitched about, I want to say 40 or 50 stories to both Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and
wow,
these two were the only ones that sold. And there might have been another time travel, but I guess I don't know. These were the ones they liked, so it's not like I'm only time travel, but yeah, I do like it.
When you come up with these ideas, do you actually get into the minutia about how the time travel occurs? Like there's this, shield around the planet. There's the thing that we have to go through. Do you get into that when you pitch these ideas, or do you just kind of overall it?
For this one, yeah, there was some kind of shield that threw them back in time. I don't know if I did as many specifics as the writer Renee did, but I did kind of have that in the pitch. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So, when I was watching this, I was really curious as to the genesis of this idea. Were you like noodling around trying to come up with ideas? Or was this just something where you're like, what would be cool is if we saw the descendants of this crew, because sometimes ideas come from the back end. Like you want a certain thing to happen. And so you come up with a story to reach that. But then sometimes the inciting incident is what kind of creates that idea. And then you ride it out to see how it goes.
Wow, that was a few centuries ago.
200 years to be exact.
I have a feeling I seem to remember it just kind of popping in my head one day. Hey, what if they go back in time and meet their descendants? So I don't really recall. I don't think it was some kind of story I wanted to tell, and then I figured out the time travel to go back. I think it just kind of popped in my head that way.
Mm-hmm. Because that's so cool. That was such a cool idea. And Cirroc, I know you're just about to jump on that, but I just wanted to just say real quick that was such a cool and fun idea. And it's no wonder that it's, as we mentioned off the air, it's one of Dave Zappone's favorite episodes. Shout out to Dave Zappone, executive producer of 455 Films, and everybody's favorite documentaries like What We Left Behind, The Captains, For the Love of Spock, the upcoming Voyager documentary. Anyway, moving on. What were you saying, Cirroc?
No, I was just going to say I really love this episode. There's so many questions that come to mind as I watch it, and I'm speaking to you. One of the things that comes to mind is was the original pitch was the existence of this timeline also contingent upon whether they left or not? Is that another aspect of it that was originally pitched by you?
Yes. I know that the whole gist of the story was that tough decision. Do they go back home and all these people never exist, or do they sacrifice themselves? That was a major part of the pitch. And one thing that they did that I had in my pitch that they didn't really look at was they kept saying, oh, all these 8,000 people that live here right now will never exist. Well, I even had it figured out, in 200 years, that's a whole lot more people than just the people that are existing right there. So I even, every generation is 20 years and maybe how many people. And so, I had this huge figure of people who would no longer exist, but they just went with the 8,000 when they wrote it, I guess for simplicity. So, but yeah, that was definitely part of the pitch, that big decision, what they should do.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Ethan. I don't know how much Star Trek Voyager you've seen.
All of it, but it's been a while.
I feel like there was a similar episode in Voyager.
There
and I don't remember what it was.
I saw it in the trivia. It was like E squared or something like that. I don't know. I do remember there being one that was very similar.
So basically, we demand a writing credit for Ethan on that Voyager episode.
Right now.
I'll take a little extra residual for that.
Right. Cirroc, call Gary Holland. Get Gary Holland on the line.
We'll get Gary on the line. Just a quick note about Gary Holland, by the way. He was one of the very few Black people on the Paramount lot at the time. So he was not just the vice president of domestic television, but he was a Black man in those times as the vice president. So he was just hats off to him and his accomplishments. He was somebody that was definitely intelligent and respectable, and treated me with the utmost, care and kindness. So I wanted to add that too, just for people's reference point.
And in a very high position amongst all the suits at Paramount. That's really cool.
That's cool.
Pretty high position. Yes, he was there, entrenched in the, as we say, the network corporate side of the thing, as opposed to the creative artsy side of it. But he still had the ability to kind of go back and forth, obviously, by having pitched the second half of this idea, which is. I would be interested to talk to him to find out what that idea was, because we do know that at some point Odo and Kira were going to end up together anyway. So this just seemed inevitable. Yeah. So I don't know if you just go to the writers and say, "Yeah, I got an idea. Odo and Kira should get together." They were like, "Duh."
Yeah.
So there's what part of that was his idea would be very interesting to know. Maybe it was also a time travel type of episode, and they combined the ideas of time travel. I don't know. So, but I do like this episode a lot, because another aspect of it is the decision that you force Sisko to be in. Right, you put Sisko in a very tough position, which we often see him in this series, where he has to decide, what's right or what's wrong, or what the right decision or what's the right move for him and his people at the time. And in this case, he went with the needs of the many, right? Even though he was his decision was overridden by future Odo.
The needs of the one overrode him.
Right. So I like the position you put Sisko in, as far as having to make these decisions about saving this group of people.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the other main element. The first element, we can get into a little bit later, is just all of like the factions and the way that each character kind of became a legend as time went on and kind of created their own groups and factions. But what I also really liked was that dilemma at the end. Usually we need something major at the end, a major climax, a major battle, a struggle, somebody that's on life support, fading fast and, shields up and all this kind of stuff. And it's really hard to have that sense of urgency and to keep the audience really gripped without that. But this episode absolutely does. I mean, there was basically no real climax. I mean, we obviously know where it was and what happened, but there was nothing that came, it wasn't like the Jem'Hadar are coming in and firing on them, but they still have to do this. For a moment, I thought it was going to be that the Klingon group was going to find out what their plan was and try and stop them. That's what I expected the climax to be. And it was none of that, yet this was one of the best episodes. This was so fun and so interesting. And we didn't need any of that. Ethan, was there ever a point that you kind of thought that you did need to add something more to it, or did you think that the story was interesting enough that it could stand on its own?
Not really. I thought it was okay as it was. I in my original story did not have any kind of big climatic battle or some kind of huge event that happened. I mean, it was now a lot of it was Renee that wrote the teleplay, because a lot of those details were his. But the gist of the story was pretty much the same thing that I had pitched to them in the story that I wrote up for them.
What stands out to me and what really pushes this story along, and I think it's the piece of the puzzle that makes it work. And the piece of the puzzle that makes it work for me is Dax and this symbiont.
Mm-hmm.
And so essentially it's as if Dax is still alive, because she can remember her past lives.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And to me, that's the linchpin of the story. And my question is now to you, Ethan, was that something that you thought up and were really relying on heavily to kind of expose what the story was about?
I know it was in there because I had a different first name for the Dax character. I don't even think I remember what it is now, but I know they changed the name when they wrote that. So I know that was in there, and it did play a part of it because she did remember, or he did remember the past from her and all the others.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree, Cirroc. That is such an important element that really gives it that human feel, that she and all of her lineage and all the way down to Yedrin have been carrying this burden, that she's the reason that this happened. She's the reason they all got stuck. She's the reason they couldn't see their family. And she's the reason that her friend Kira dies. And, she guaranteed them. It wasn't like she just made some flippant decision. It was like Sisko basically said, "Are you sure?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, I'm positive. It's fine." So that really added this powerful human element, that it's not just, like the descendants want something or don't want something, but a couple of them, including Odo, are actually still feeling the wounds that happened, 200 years ago, and she's carrying that with her. So yeah, I agree. That's a huge piece of this story.
Yeah, it makes it work totally, and I believed the performance there, because just to highlight the actor who played this future Dax, I thought he did a wonderful job of having a familiarity with Sisko. There was a comfort level there, as if he had known him so well. And however they worked that out on the set and explaining it to the actor, I thought that he did a fantastic job. I should have his name in it. Forgive me, guys, for not.
Gary Frank, does that sound right?
Gary Holland, I think. No, I'm just
kidding. No.
I believe that's
a lot of Garys.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, he did a fantastic job conveying a kind of personal connection with Sisko that you also see with Dax. So I thought he extended that relationship, and it was believable to me, especially when they had that story about the dancer. He says, "Yeah, let me tell you about that dancer," and he's like, "All right, that's enough.
That's okay."
Yeah, no more. End it right there. We'll leave it there.
That's such a good moment.
It was a
I
great
watched that
moment
3
because-
times. I went back and I watched it 3 times.
Yeah.
Like that's enough. That'll
do. That'll do. And I love that moment because I feel like that's another kind of moment that we all have in our own lives, right? It's that moment where a friend brings up a story that you don't want told in this exact circumstance. You're like, oh no, yeah.
They just have to say a
whatever.
name or a place.
Yeah,
You're like, oh,
yeah.
all right, okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'll buy lunch. You got it. Okay,
Remember
it's my
your
turn. You're right.
bachelor party? Yeah. You remember your bachelor party? Yeah. The
yeah.
Dodgers did what?
Yeah.
You want to move on.
Yeah.
We're not talking about that right now. So I thought that was really believable. Shout out to Renee for the teleplay, the dialogue there that also sold that. But yes, this was a fantastic episode. I wrote down Twilight Zone in my notes. Ethan, I know you're a fan of Twilight Zone. And this just had like that Twilight Zone feel to it. And I'm sure Rod Serling would sit back and be proud of this kind of an episode.
That would be cool. That would be awesome. Yeah, I do. Since you mentioned Renee doing the teleplay, he told me when they bought the story that normally when you pitch your second story, they'll give you a shot at the first draft of the teleplay. But he said, right here, we're in a time crunch. We only have like 3 months in order to get this thing on the air. So they're going to do it in-house. And I'm really glad they did, because I don't think I could have done nearly as well as it came out. Maybe today, maybe now that I've had a lot more experience writing, but back then, I don't think I would have done it nearly as much justice. So shout out to him.
Well, you shouldn't sell
he
yourself
nailed it.
short, but yeah, I mean, that is true. You do have 25 years more knowledge and experience now, whereas back then, were you happy when they said, we'll just take it from here, or did you kind of wish you had a stab at it at that time?
At the time, I had wished I'd had a stab at it. I was really looking forward to doing something like that. No, if I had gone and met with them in the writer's room and we worked out the story for 2 or 3 days, maybe so. But just cold like that off my story, no, I couldn't have done anything like that as well. But maybe that's where the writer's room and where the whole group sitting down, breaking it all down, maybe that's where a lot of that comes from.
Oh, I also wanted to talk about, sorry, we're going to take a break in just a minute here. But actually go for it, Cirroc. What do you got?
No, I was just going to add the fact that maybe also because they are combining 2 stories, that they have the luxury of the other guy's pitch, and so they know kind of how they want to blend them. So I would just give them an excuse for that as well. But yes, they did a fantastic job. I just put this in the Twilight Zone category of just episodes that are standalone classic episodes where it's just like, it becomes one of those self-fulfilling prophecies. It's one of those things where you can rewatch it over and over again and just see different nuances of it. Definitely a great episode.
Oh man, that's self-fulfilling prophecy stuff. Man, I started to get lost in that thought of like, well, wait, if they're going back 200 years, and then does that mean it's going to happen again? And I was like, no, don't even think about it. It's not going to enter into play in this episode. Don't give yourself a headache, because that kind of stuff can blow your mind when you start actually trying to like follow along. So anyway, I made the smart decision of just don't think about it. Just focus on this current story. I do want to talk about on the other side, everybody that's at home that's just listening and not watching, Ethan and I do have matching backgrounds, but we'll talk about that. And Cirroc, I definitely want to talk about, because I felt a little pressure on your shoulders in this episode. So we'll talk about that on the other side, if at all possible. So we'll be right back on our on the 7th rule. We're going to take like the super quickest break you've ever seen, and we'll be right back. Hey everybody, welcome back to the 7th rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
We've got Mr. Ethan Calk joining us as well, Deep Space Nine Star Trek writer and sci-fi writer. They razzed me for like 15 minutes on the break about saying super quickest. So I'd like to put in a formal apology for saying super quickest. I panicked.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very quickly, let's go over the trivioids that may or may not have made the cutting room floor. The USS Defiant is returning home to Deep Space Nine after a week-long reconnaissance mission in the Gamma Quadrant. Jadzia Dax says the bunks on the Defiant are so uncomfortable. Kira breaks the news to Dax and Odo that she and Shakar aren't seeing each other anymore. That's a thing. Captain Sisko is trying to cut down on his Ractogeno intake. Even with a micro lathe, which I have no idea what it is, Chief O'Brien isn't sure he'll have Molly's dollhouse finished in time for her birthday. O'Brien marries Ensign Tenenbaum after 10 years of being stranded. Odo has waited 200 years to tell Kira he loves her. And Dax says sometimes Worf is so hard to get along with. So, okay, Cirroc. So here's the pressure.
So you said I had some. You said I had some pressure. Yeah, let's get to the pressure.
When Captain Sisko picks up that little baby and is just loving the hell out of it, and he's just having so much fun, my first thought was, "Oh boy, Daddy's getting a little baby hurry. He wants some grandkids." He's looking at 17-year-old Jake and being like, "Come on, man. What's going on? I'm ready."
Yeah, no, that's a different episode. That's a Lower Decks episode later on about sowing your royal oats. But no, I actually like to see that Sisko with the baby. I thought it was a really human touch for him. I thought it made him look. You get to see the father in him, and the kind of spirit that he has around children, because he's very good with kids in this episode. There's another point in this episode later on where the kid's running to go harvest plant the trees, and he kind of grabs him. He's like, whoa, where are you going? And that's just Avery, because he's very good with children, and I've seen him with my own eyes around babies and around young adults, and he's just really good with kids. And to me, this was just another example of that. The way he was holding with the baby, you could see he was having fun and very playful, and to me that was just a reflection of how happy he was to see this little black baby as one of his descendants. So I mean, it actually has a very poignant message behind it. And I think all of them really were kind of surprised to see their descendants, right? O'Brien,
Dax.
So was Bashir, Dax. Bashir was impressed that his descendant was a doctor, and he wouldn't let that go. Like, all right, man, enough of that. He was trying to make it look like it runs in his blood, like we're all doctors, But there was a pride for all of them to see a glimpse into, because we only get to see one or two generations away, right? That's my grandfather, maybe my great grandfather, and maybe you have grandkids or great grandkids, but it pretty much ends right there. So to be able to see 200-300 years down the line and see what your children's children end up looking like, that's kind of it's something that all of us would find that some kind of value in, or cherish, or reflect on life and what it's about in a kind of different way. So I think that's another element of the show, of this episode, that makes it in that Twilight Zone, just top shelf, top tier storytelling in my book.
Yeah. Now, so here's the other thing. Real quick, everybody at home, Ethan and I are matching backgrounds. I've got the background of Kira's grave site with the tree that looked really cool and really nice. Ethan's is real. He's just out. He's actually out in his backyard. But it's funny that our backgrounds almost look like we chose the same thing, but his is real and much more pleasant than mine. You're out in San Antonio.
That's Ethan behind you in the backdrop, right? I think he's actually at the tree.
There he is.
You're farther away from the tree. He's a little bit closer. But yeah, that was a great background choice for the both of you. A quick question, just for everybody out there. Did anybody else get this thought in their head when they saw the Odo, the other Odo, descendant Odo? Did they think of Liam Neeson? Because there was a point where I was like, when did Liam Neeson show up on this show? No, I thought that was funny because he did have the flared out hair and he just looked a little bit different. So he said, I got better at morphing over the years, so I did like that they also changed his look, which is, was kind of a cool thing.
I thought of Curzon Dax because there was that episode where Curzon Dax kind of took over and they poofed out his hair like a cotton swab. And so that's what I thought of. I don't know, Ethan, what do you think? Did you think Curzon or did you think Liam Neeson?
If you're watching now, you might think Liam Neeson, but back then, I don't know how big of a star he was. And so it could be either. I bet you Rene Bergenois loved the fact that he could get a little bit different look for a change too. Yeah.
I was trying to look at his makeup too and see, did they just put like a thinner film on his face, or did they just not even add a mask, maybe just add a little bit of makeup? Did you guys notice?
Kind of hard to tell, but yeah, it seemed like there was a lot less appliance there.
Certainly less, yeah.
Yeah, because there were more like ridges in his skin, like how your skin normally has folds and ridges and stuff, and even wrinkles. There was more of that present than his standard face, which is kind of smoother and more, it's kind of a plain type of thing. So yeah, I think that it looked like an aged version of him in some point, like
more
like
human.
he wanted to look his age, so he wanted to be more distinguished, so he kind of put the smooth baby skin away and kind of gave himself some more maturity to his look. But I did like the look. I did think of Curzon as well because he did have the kind of poofy hair. But I did, this episode had all the elements. The other thing I thought was great was some of the lines that Renee decided to put down. And one of them was when Odo says, "I've been waiting 200 years to say I love you."
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's a great line, and it's like, how romantic would that be, if I was that romantic to be able to say that to somebody.
You are.
No, but I know good romance when I see it, and that was one element of it for sure. The other thing I thought was pretty cool was how O'Brien was such a faithful husband, right?
Right.
There was a moment I think he's like, I got a wife and kids, don't bother me with that, right? He was like, I love that too. I was like, wow, O'Brien's like, he's a good guy, he doesn't want the temptation. Don't even bring it up. Don't tell me to look over there.
He's like, I don't want to have to start dating all over again. I got a wife and kids. Can we just stick to the plan, guys?
Bashir was the opposite.
Yeah. He's like, oh, there's a new ensign, huh? Nice. All right. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly.
So
sorry. Yeah,
no, I was just going to ask you, Ethan, because we can kind of keep jumping around on the different character stories. There was Dax's story, there was Bashir's storyline. Was there a particular storyline that you were most proud of or that you're most excited about?
Well, it wasn't mine, but I really liked the Sons of Moog. I think they really did a good job with that. The Dax part, because I know I had a little bit to do with some of that good stuff that was in there. And so those two, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked the Sons of Moog. I really liked that Klingon story. You could almost have turned this into a two-parter if they wanted to, where Worf does go with the Sons of Moog, and they kind of do their own thing, and he meets them. He's like, that is not the way a Klingon warrior, whatever, like he like writes them, like they say, this is what we do. And he's like, well, actually, and then they're like, thanks for teaching us the real ways, the real Klingon ways, that hasn't been diluted for 200 years.
Yeah. A spinoff series.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you, Ryan. I think that it could have been a two-parter. There's a lot of material there that they kind of cut away so that they can get the story finished and wrapped up in one episode. I did like the Sons of Mog. I particularly like the Klingon who asked Worf to kill him initially, the first one who starts it. I thought he was a good Klingon and kind of looked like a good descendant of Klingons because there was an element of there that was like he didn't know some of the things. So he kind of looked like a rookie Klingon or something like that. So it would have been great, Ryan, to see. And I did think when I was watching it that they were going to start off and, start their own little side group and try to maybe fight and overthrow or something, trying to fight for power or control over the situation. There was a part of me that thought, oh, that's where this is going to go. But it was also clever. And this is a question I have for you, Ethan. I thought there was a clever twist about the Dax sabotaging their first plan to leave, right? He said, I have it all worked out. This is the schematics. I've been drawing this plan up. If we just do this, this, and this, everything will work out fine. And I'm like, wow, this is great. This will end in about 10 minutes, right? This is going to be short.
Right.
And then he gets revealed for being a saboteur. And I have a question if that was something also that was part of your original idea.
I should have pulled out my my old original pitch and story. Maybe a little bit of that, not to the detail I think that it was in the episode, but maybe a little bit. Yep. That's going back a long way, and I haven't read my original story for a while.
So you said you pitched like 40 or 50 episodes. What number would these episodes have been? Like, what is this, like pitch number 3 or is this pitch number 40?
Visionary, my first one was on my very first pitch.
Wow.
I probably pitched 2 or 3 times in between, and then maybe this is my 4th or 5th time that I pitched. I would do maybe 4 stories per session. So probably number 16, I'd gone through maybe 16 pitches before this one. And then after that, I kept pitching and nothing ever happened.
But they kept bringing you back.
Like, hey, they kept bringing you back.
Yep, that's true. And it was kind of an open invitation. Said, hey, anytime you got some stories, just give us a call, set up a pitch. And we did it over the phone. My first one was in person. I sold Visionary in person. And then after that, I realized, oh, wait, I didn't have to fly out to LA. They do this on the phone. So I did almost all the rest of them on the phone.
Yeah. And, I wonder if there were some other episodes that almost got picked up, because the way Deep Space Nine was written in the final 3 or 4 seasons was kind of serialized. So it's a little tougher to have these one-off episodes, which means it was tougher for them to take pitches, because they usually can only take a pitch for an episodic kind of thing, because you don't know what their plans are for season 5. And so the best they could try to do is get a story idea and incorporate it into their long-term plans. So I wonder, I would think that there were a few of your ideas that they really liked, but they're like, how do we incorporate that? Or that conflicts with the long-term plan we have. Because you're pitching, 6 months after they've all, behind what they've written, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And there were a couple. One of the writers said he really, really liked it, but they were already doing an episode very similar to that. So they had already had the idea before I pitched it. And there were a couple others. There was a Voyager one that Brandon Braga liked a lot, but couldn't convince the rest of the staff. So
what was that one?
That one was one where they go through some kind of cloud, and something about their personality or their mindset moves into another person. So now Kim thinks he's Janeway, or he's acting like Janeway, and all these different, and they're experiencing past memories of those other characters, kind of get to know and see things that you wouldn't normally see. So, but he liked it, but he said, no, I couldn't convince anybody else to go with it.
You should have been like, let's just you and me do it then.
Yeah, I know.
No, that's great.
It's funny too, because some of them you get where if I would have changed 2 sentences, it might have happened. I got turned down. Said, well, it works better if the people don't like each other. It was one where they were stranded on the Rio Grande, sort of a lifeboat type story, and heading toward the wormhole, and we're going to be destroyed because they couldn't go through it at the right angle, something like that. But the people I had on it were kind of friends, and they said, if you had Quark or somebody that had a lot of conflict, it would have been great. And I went, oh, okay. So learned a lesson there.
You're like, well, that was my next idea.
Yeah.
What a coincidence.
What a coincidence. So,
did you hear about the one where Quark was on the ship and very upset? When you're watching episodes that you wrote and you're looking back and you're watching the final product, what's that feeling like for you? And are you satisfied all the time, or do you sometimes have a disappointment?
Not in these 2 episodes. The 2 Deep Space Nines, I was very, very pleased with what they did with it. I think they made my stories better than they were originally, and I really have no complaints whatsoever in those. Some other stuff I've done, I wish would have turned out a little better, but that was more budgetary type things and other factors. And so, but yeah, these 2 I have no complaints about whatsoever.
All right. So let's talk about, we do something called NAMs, that's non-appearance mentions, because we believe that even if a character is not seen on screen, their story is furthered and further developed if they're mentioned, because sometimes he'll say, for example, Captain Sisko will say, oh, well, Jake's working on this book. So now we're learning more about Jake Sisko and his story, even though he's not on screen. So the NAMs for the day are Shakar, right? Shakakar. Maybe his last one, because this is her mentioning a very anticlimactic end to their relationship. They're just like, she's like, oh, him? Yeah, no, he's been gone for weeks. You didn't know? Yeah, how'd it happen? There's just some prophecy. I don't know. Who cares? The love of your life? Yeah, no, whatever. Anyway, moving on. I'm looking at Odo now. Which also brought up Vedic Barile. He got another NAM, which I didn't expect would happen. Jake Sisko gets one, of course. Yay. And obviously Molly got like 1 million NAMs, as did Keiko and Kirayoshi when Chief O'Brien says, I have a wife and kids. So lots of NAMs this time. As you might guess, Ethan, the people that have the most NAMs are Keiko, Nog, Molly, Rom, Jake, and Shakar is the surprising one. Shakar's got 9 NAMs. He has 3 actual appearances and 9 non-appearance mentions. It's the craziest. It's the craziest amount, besides maybe Cousin Gala, who has 1 real appearance and 6 non-appearance mentions. Crazy ratios.
Yeah, that ratio. Yeah. The backdrop that you have, Ryan, the backdrop that you have with the tree. I just wanted to give a shout out to the director, Alan Croker, because there were a few moments there that I really liked the lighting. And even as they were strolling sometimes through the this promenade of this other place, there were moments where I thought, wow, this is believable. I liked the way the set was designed. So all the people that contributed, like the set designer, the lighting crew, camera, the DP. I think all of these people really put together a nice product here. And shout out to the director of this episode, Alan. I really enjoyed the shots with Odo and Kira at the graveside. The lighting of it, the way it looked, it just felt peaceful. There was a serenity there, and I thought that the quality of the film was done well.
Now, speaking of the sets, I actually got to go out and watch them shoot for a day, and it was in the big set that was the colony. And you're right; those were absolutely amazing sets. I mean, it took up that entire stage, and the way it was lit looked like outdoors. I was really amazed, and I did get to meet and talk to Alan Croker for a little while. So
really?
Cool.
How was he?
He was very, very nice. It was really interesting. He's got a leather jacket he had there, and on the inside there was this little plastic pouch, and inside the pouch was a picture of Marilyn Monroe. I'm not sure what that was about, but that was on the inside of his jacket. I don't know. That's the one thing I remember about him.
Yeah.
It was a fun day on the set that day. So.
Yeah, that colony was well done. I looked at the background, the details on the walls, and just everything. It was kind of legitimate. Even when they were out on the fields planting the trees, that had to be real. That wasn't CGI. Yes. So
outdoor,
and it was shot well. So it just felt it had this quality, the lighting, everything was. I just thought it was done well. And there was also parts of this like Sisko stopping, cutting back on coffee. I was like, it's funny to me that no matter how far into the future you're in,
right? The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah, it's like, how long does a beer go back, and how long will a coffee go forward? Yeah. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's going anywhere, right? But yeah, Alan did a great job as far as directing this episode. Like I said, the set designers, awesome job. There was a line there too that I thought was cutting a little bit, and it was when O'Brien tells Kira, "I don't believe in your prophets," right? And I was like, he kind of like, it was cold. But it was also like, that's the truth, right? But it was kind of cold the way he said it. It was like,
Yeah, that's our Chief O'Brien.
I guess when your whole family's at stake there, you're not going to rely on something like you don't believe in.
Right. You're not pulling any punches. You're going right to the core of the issue. And I thought that was another great job of the writer.
Right. That was reminiscent of when the crew of the Defiant and some Jem'Hadar had to work together, and the Jem'Hadar like, today I am dead and I fight for my life or whatever, and then O'Brien turns to his people and goes, I'm very much alive and I plan on staying that way or whatever. He had like that little speech. Yeah, he's definitely a guy that's like, look, I don't care about that. I don't care about the old man in the sky. I don't care about profits or ring rates or anything like that. All I care about is my family and my job and my whiskey. And don't tell Julian, but him too a little bit.
Yeah. Yep.
No, he doesn't sugarcoat much. So he gets right to the point when he's talking. Also love the exterior shots of the Defiant. There were a few times when they had exterior shots of the Defiant with the planet behind it, and I thought those were pretty detailed and well done. I enjoyed it. The funny thing with Worf too is also when he brought the Klingons to the field, and they're like, I thought you said we're going to kill something. He's like, yeah, we're going to kill time. Time is the enemy. And I thought that was a hilarious little insert there.
Killing time. I'll tell you what made me chuckle, and I kind of feel bad for it, but it was when the Klingons, the first ones showed up. I was calling them Klingon cosplayers.
That's what it kind of felt like.
They're like, hey, we're Klingons, and we're like, come on, you're not really Klingons, though, are you? You're Klingon cosplayers. But no, that was a great story, because that's what they're saying, either by blood or by choice. So it's kind of like a way of life. It's not like you have to be a descendant of Worf to be a Klingon. You can choose to be a Klingon. You can take on that way of life and say, I want to kill Yar bears in the backwoods or whatever it was, and then I'm a Klingon. Mm-hmm. So that was a nice little addition that I did like. And I was like, all right, I guess they're not really cosplayers. They're LARPers, right? Live action role players. Maybe this will work better on the free for all. I'm going to try this bit on the free for all.
Also, really quickly, my favorite line of this episode was Sisko's line. And there was a point at the end where they're like, well, those people never even existed, right? And they're gone. And Sisko's like, no, they existed. As long as we remember them, they always will. And I thought that was another great line, about the people that have existed in the past that we remember and, we pay homage to every so often, but they all existed,
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
That was a good line.
Yeah, and it was also good. I don't know about you, Cirroc, but I did feel like I was watching this for the first time again. That's why I wasn't sure what to think about the Klingons. But when we do find out that they all disappeared or never existed, never happened, I did immediately think it was Odo, right? But then when we were led to believe that it possibly was Yedrin Dax, and then it gives the twist, even though I kind of expected it to be Odo, the explanation was really good. And you knew that it had to be somebody that was left behind, because somebody that comes along with them on the ship as part of the crew could be like court-martialed or whatever for going against the captain's orders and for sabotaging. Ethan, did you have the idea about how this would wrap up, or did you have an idea or a specific character in mind?
It wasn't that particular string of events. Mm-hmm. I know I had them deciding, and then something happens, and then they get home after all, but there wasn't a specific in my original story that it was the older Yoda. Well, in my original story, that older Odo or the newer Odo or the better shapeshifter didn't exist, because that was from Gary Holland's story. So I had something different, but it was similar.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to hit that free for all in just a second here. Yep, we've got everything covered. We're going to hit that free for all right now, ladies and gentlemen, and species of all ages. So we'll be right back on the Seventh Rule. Everybody, welcome back to the Seventh Rule. This is the free for all, and Mr. Ethan Calk has decided to stick around with us and show off his cool front yard. We also have Cirroc Lofton, Melissa Longo, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Eve England out in Wales, where it's late at night. She's in a hotel and she's a little tipsy. We also have Dr. Marie Segal.
No, she's not. No, don't put that out there. She is not.
Eve, you can tell them it's true.
I've had one drink, so I'm fine.
Yeah, champagne's not even heavy. It's not even like a.
It's a soft drink. It's a fizzy.
A scotch or anything.
A soft drink.
It's a fizzy pop.
All right, so Cirroc reminds us that I forgot to play the game entitled Jake Sisko Guesses the IMDb Score.
I love that part.
Yes, and this I'm going to guess was in the 8.3 to 8.5 episode, like in that perimeter. 8.3, 8.5.
Anybody else have any guesses?
In my book.
With the IMDb
I know the answer because I saw it when I put in my 10.
Ethan, Anne-Marie gives every single episode ever a 10.
No, not every. Not every.
Okay, which
not
one?
Every. There was
just 99.9% of them.
Okay, so the answer is 8.1, Cirroc. Very close yet again. Anne Marie, which episodes have you not given a 10 to?
Meridian.
You always pick on Meridian.
Do not get a 10. Occasionally, like, I won't rate them because I would never want to give less than a 10 to a Deep Space Nine episode. But yeah, most of them. I'm not a big Eddington fan, so I don't tend to rate those. I know. I didn't want to tell you.
What did he ever do to you?
I know. His real name is Eddington.
Is that even his
betray
name?
you?
They're just little children of time.
Brian.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thanks.
I never tried Eddington either, so don't feel bad, Anne Marie.
That's true. We actually know that.
It'll give me a spyware.
So, guys, as you know, Ethan got the story by credit on this episode. So if you have any thoughts or questions directed at him, or just things you want to throw out about this particular episode, let's hit it up. TJ, I know you said that you just watched this episode again. Any thoughts on it?
Well, obviously I enjoyed the story very much. It's, kind of an interesting thought exercise, I think, to imagine, those 8,000 lives and their history, and kind of exploring the concept of, if the Defiant leaves and they don't go back in time, did it ever really happen? Did they ever exist?
Yeah.
And, I kind of like the way that Sisko summed it up, that, as long as we remember them, they existed. And I think, the fact that Odo has the older Odo's experience kind of downloaded into him through that link, kind of follows that assumption that they did exist, that, what they did mattered. And also the fact that, they were kind of upset that, what the course of action they took, kind of ended those 8,000 lives. And, that, seems kind of tragic, but also quite unavoidable, if they're to go on and live their lives. So it's just kind of an interesting thought exercise to go through, and that's what Star Trek does for us, and that's what these good episodes do, is they give us something to think about in that what if scenario, and kind of let us stretch our philosophy legs a little bit.
That's something I hadn't thought of. By the way, everybody, Rex A. Wood is also joining us. He just popped in. But what's funny is they all thought, you're right, they all thought they were going to die. So what if they just did something like, or what if like Sisko just started making out with Dax and he's just like, whatever, I don't care, we're all gonna die, or like he started drinking Ractagino and he's like, I don't care anymore, I'm gonna double fist the Ractagino, and then they survive and they're like, oh, oops, and like Bashir's like, Captain, I'm sorry I crapped in your office, but whatever. They just did stuff because they thought they were gonna die, no repercussions. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Melissa, do you have any thoughts on this episode about crapping in offices or otherwise?
Well, the crapping in offices hadn't come to mind, but I do have a lot of thoughts on this episode. One, because, I'm a Kira Odo fan, so I always love seeing their relationship develop in the way that it does. But it also it also asks a lot of philosophical questions that I don't know that there's a yes answer or no answer to. Like, yeah, the 8,000 people would cease to exist, and I have questions about the math on how they got 8,000 people in 200 years, but and genetically,
you're gonna put your tie on or what?
And genetically, how the gene pool would actually look, because I don't know that it would look the way it does on the screen, because everything would be diluted. There's one Klingon, there's one Trill, there's so
I thought that too, but then they're like, in separate, then multiple ones are mating with each other also.
Yes.
And then in Voyager, it said it takes like, you have to be, it's even less than being a fourth Klingon before like Klingon features become less dominant. So I think,
Yes, but why wouldn't there be more Klingon Trill mixes? And then what happens?
I guess
to
it's
the
just who
symbiote?
finds who hot. I guess I thought about that.
What happens to the symbiont or the ability to carry the symbiont? Because Dax wouldn't look like a pure Trill.
Mm.
You know,
Right.
it would be a Klingon who's capable of carrying a symbiont, possibly, rather than, you know, having a pure Trill carrying a symbiont, because that pure bloodline doesn't exist anymore. You know, but anyway, but huh?
Would these be all questions for Muhammad Noor?
I was just going to say,
That's what
Yeah,
I
this
was-
is right
yeah.
up Muhammad's alley.
he did
Where's
one.
Muhammad when we need him?
On the
He did one
Very
about,
good, Rex.
I think he did a recent one with the gene pools and things. I bet he must mention this episode. We need to go back and look at that episode.
Oh,
on the numbers, the 8,000. When I did my pitch and when I did my story, I tried to figure out how many people that would really be, how many generations would be in that 200 years, and how many they would start out
I
with.
know. I was
Multiply. But the writers just went with 8,000, I guess, to make it simple. But I had a huge number. I can't remember what it was now, but I had a huge number in my story, and they just went 8,000.
Okay.
So
but you know what? Real quick, I was reminded of something that we wanted to talk about. We forgot to mention it earlier. Ethan, you said that you saw a clip from this episode in the What We Left Behind documentary. What was that clip?
if I remember right, it was when Odo was standing at Kira's quarters at the very end, and it's just a close-up of him for maybe a second and a half. Because I watched it to see if there was anything, and boom, I said, oh, and then it was gone. So I'm pretty sure it was that particular scene.
That's cool. I don't know if anybody else caught that.
What was deleted though? What was the part that wasn't on there?
Right. Ethan was telling us that there was a deleted scene that didn't end up making the final cut. What was that?
Yeah, so I was able to go out and watch them shoot for a day on this episode, and it was the last scene they shot, and it was a Friday night, and it was probably 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and there was a scene in the Defiant sick bay or whatever it was, and the current Odo couldn't hold his shape within the barrier, and he was in a little box that looked like a bread making machine with a bunch of little blinky lights on it. And there was some scene there about talking about Odo and can't hold his shape. And I can't remember whether the better shape shifting Odo came in and that's where they did the link, but they cut that scene out. It was never there. There was also a nurse that was an extra. I don't even know if she had a line in there, but it was a nurse that I'd never seen before. And so it was a quick scene. It was probably 30 seconds long, but it never appeared in the episode.
Might have been Ensign Tenenbaum.
Could have been. I don't know if she had a name. But could have been.
Well,
that would explain the link that we never saw. So
Mhm.
maybe that was
Right.
that scene.
Right.
so
It was actually a bread maker for real, like from the store.
No, it was a real bread maker from the store, and it just had little blinking lights. They put
So
their
cool.
little lights all over it.
so
Put L cars
Eve,
on anything.
Odo loaf. Odo loaf.
Odo.
Eve, catch us up on what you've
He's
learned.
just Odo.
It's don't.
Odo do. Odo
No,
do.
D-O-U-G-H.
Yeah.
Oh,
there you go.
okay, that's even better.
Odo.
Duh.
Great one.
Sorry.
Yeah. So
Or just
Eve,
Odo.
did you get us any cool little tidbits from the companion?
No, so like I said, I didn't have, it's actually quite a lot of pages on this one. One thing I've literally just spotted now, and it's a question for Ethan, I don't know, you've probably already covered it, but it's talking about how that you and Gary Holland pretty much came up with a really similar story for this, and that it ended up being obviously a combination of those two stories. So I suppose it'd just be interesting to sort of, and it probably says in the companion what the similarities and differences were, but it'd be interesting to know what that process was in terms of bringing those two stories and ending up with what we ended up with.
Okay. Yeah, we did talk about it, but there were two separate pitches at two separate times. We never worked together. That's why you see the word "and" between our names instead of the ampersand.
Right.
So two separate pitches, and he pitched the part about Odo and Kira. My pitch was the whole go back and get stranded and meet your descendants. That was my pitch.
Oh, cool.
So they just liked both of them and just figured out a way to put them together.
And they do work really well together, don't they? It's nice to have that sort of personal touch.
They did work well together.
Yeah.
It's so intriguing too that they like chose these two storylines to intertwine, because I read that like the Odo Kira pitch was from I think season 2, but they just felt that it was too early to start putting Odo and Kira together at that point. And so it's really fast, like, because those two storylines do work so well in this one episode. It's amazing that it wasn't even just that they were pitched similarly in time, and just they remembered it in the back of their minds and spotted it.
It was almost, I think I remember the comment from Renee, the writer, saying that we had this story and we didn't know what to do with it. And when you pitched yours, we figured out how they could go together.
Awesome.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Isn't
and the
it?
way, like,
I
the
think
writers'
it's
room like kept it in their minds for years. Like
Right.
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
basically like computers.
Mhm.
Well, lots of
I
color
don't know how
coded.
they did.
Maybe they had big files with color coded tabs everywhere. I don't know. That's how I imagine it.
Like the script.
What were you
Right.
saying,
So I
Cirroc?
mean, it could be a story, because when they buy the story, you write it up and it's 9-10 pages double spaced what you send them, and then they call you back and give you a bunch of notes and you just turn in a second draft of it. And so they could have all those 8-9 page stories on file and just pull them out.
No,
Question.
that is genius. Yeah.
Are there any elements or concepts of the story from the original pitch, and I don't know if this was talked about before, that maybe did not make it onto the screen?
Not a lot. I think most of the stuff that wasn't on the pitch was good stuff that was added. All the dialogue and the way that weaved all the stories together. Of course, I didn't know anything about the Kira and Odo story. That wasn't part of my pitch at all. So I think the episode was really well put together, and a lot of the really good stuff and a lot of the good lines were the writing staff and Renee, the writer. So, but there wasn't a lot. I don't think there was anything cut out. Most of this pitch was pretty much intact.
That's awesome.
All right, Anne Marie, have you watched this episode recently? And if so, what are your thoughts on this episode?
It's a major
Besides, it's a
rotation
10.
episode.
Rotation?
I was actually, it's in my rotation of ones I've watched a lot, so I love them. Well, I was wondering, because there's so many people in the main cast involved in the story, like on the planet and on the ship, like way more than usual, like to this point in Deep Space Nine. Did you have an idea for like which characters you really wanted to make sure were on the Defiant to end up on the planet? And did you expect them to have so many ones?
I'm pretty sure I know I had Dax. Well, I had a different name. It wasn't Yedrin. They changed that name. I know I had Dax. I'm pretty sure O'Brien. I haven't read my original story for a while either. So the Sons of Moog was not my idea. I wish I could take credit for it. But yeah, and apologies, Cirroc. I didn't write Jake into the story. So again.
He got a name.
Okay. All right. So nobody in particular, but just kind of who I figured would be logical.
Yeah, I agree with your point, Anne Marie, that usually they pair off people. And so it's just like two people going through some kind of crazy situation, or just one, or, but they have the bulk of the the cast aboard the Defiant. And I really liked O'Brien's reluctancy to want to go and do this. He's like, in the beginning, he's like, do we have to?
I'm going home.
Yeah, well, let's go home, man. And Sisko's like, how fast will it be? You know, piece of cake, you know, it'll be easy. So I actually like the way they drug us into it. Like, all right. Even there was a line about what if it's intelligent mushrooms? And I'm like,
fungus, yeah.
Yeah. And I like Sisko's face on that. Like he's trying to think, like, you know, what's the intelligent fungi?
Yeah,
you know?
that was some really good banter.
It was good. It was good banter. Yeah, I liked it a lot.
I thought it was interesting how the whole crux of what the crew was going to do kind of shifted when O'Brien shifted after he worked in the planting area, and that's kind of when they collectively made the decision, okay, we're gonna make this sacrifice to make sure that these 8,000 people continue to exist. I thought that was kind of interesting that the decision, stood on that. Kind of one person changing his opinion, that decided, okay, I guess, maybe Ensign Tannenbaum isn't, that bad.
I wanted to know so much more about her.
Yeah, so like Sisko is just going to be like, no. Well, if the lowest ranking officer wants to go, all right, fine, I'm going to change my mind. All right, whatever, let's do it.
Well, I liked, on that note, I liked how Sisko was like, we don't have the right to force anyone to stay here if they don't want to. So that's kind of what it hinged on, is that either everyone agrees to go, or everyone agrees to stay, or we go back home. It was, nobody had the right to take that choice away from anyone. So I liked Sisko's point of view on that.
I wonder about the other 40 people on the Defiant.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Like, did they have a voice?
Not if you're not on camera.
We'll pretend that it's a conference room.
Not if you're not on camera.
No, but you guys have to correct me if I'm wrong, if this thought went through any of your guys' head. But as I was watching it, I was also thinking, is it possible that they can take them with them? Like, can't they just like
maybe
rescue
a few of
They
them?
would cease to exist. They wouldn't go back in time to do it from the
To
beginning.
create them in the first
Weird,
place.
yes, so they disappear
Exactly.
off the ship.
Yeah.
That's part of the time travel conundrum.
Which begs the question, were they really meant to exist at all?
Yeah, because that I was trying to plan the scenario.
If they go to meet themselves in the future, their future, were they meant to get trapped in the past at all? And obviously not, because they didn't. Because the 200-year-old older Odo made that choice for everyone. And you would think somebody who had existed 200 years with this civilization, he's the one making this decision, not everyone else. There had to be a reason for that.
Melissa, do you think that they just kept picking on him so much that he wanted to kill them all? Like they're just always like, oh, that's the lonely hermit guy. He's always crying about Kira. He's so weird and grumpy and got a little weird afro. And so he's like, oh, I'll teach them. I'll make us all disappear. I think that was his motivation, for real.
Yeah, I think he was like, these kids are going to stop calling me Liam Neeson. I do not look like Liam Neeson.
So I wonder, when he did when he changed the flight plan, I wonder if when he finished, he just said,
Harumph. Tell Quark I said hello.
So is it Quark's, since like the actual Quark isn't in the episode, but we get a representation of him, is that a NAM or an appearance?
What was the representation?
Oh,
this is
In the classroom. In the
Teaching math.
classroom.
Note on
Right.
the list.
Oh, that's an appearance. That's an
Because he
appearance.
was on
for sure.
screen.
An appearance. Okay.
That's right. I forgot about that. Good knowledge. Hey, Rex 4A's Wood. Have you seen this? Have you seen this episode recently? Do you remember?
I haven't in a while. Just one thing I do remember about it real quick is just and probably just a line in there that Gabriel, the young guy, says to to Worf, says to Worf about, can you kill people with just a look? And he says, only when I'm angry.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a little bit of what I remember. I haven't seen it in a while. I need to go back and watch it. I really do. But
Yeah, no, that was
I can
a great
remember
line.
that line in there. Yeah. I can remember.
And we didn't
that line
touch
in
on
there.
that one earlier. That was another one of the good lines. I watched that one a couple times because then the adults, they kind of laugh. They're like, but the kids are like, what?
Yeah, exactly. The big eyes. They get the big eyes, and the one Gabriel runs off.
Don't be angry.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah.
And also the name Gabriel. I don't know. I just thought of the Bell
Yeah.
riots, and
Right.
so I was like, the fact that they even used the name, I was like, hey, Gabriel popped up again. It can't be a coincidence, right?
Mhm.
And also the idea that Quark is a math teacher is like perfect.
Yeah.
That needs to happen.
Yeah.
They need to just he needs to put a curriculum together so that they just can rerun that on all their hollow suites.
Right.
I just love Jadzia too, because she is so good at entertaining herself. With her little jokes that amuse just her more than anybody. She doesn't even care about entertaining everyone else. She's like, Quark will crack me up every time I see him in a hologram.
There are 7 people entertained by her inner monologue.
It's just so fun.
Yeah.
That's funny, TJ. Well, we've got a
It's
few
weird to
minutes
me
left
that-
here.
No, I was going to say it's weird to me that Odo, the guy who really doesn't have life or death at hand, is the one who makes the life or death decision for everybody. He's still alive. He's not gonna, but he's the one that makes the life or death decision. It's kind of strange to me that the ball falls in his court.
Well, and he kind of gives his life for Kira in a sense.
But he also, his memory is preserved by the link.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it shows. I think it's quite an interesting. I like how they do that at the end, because it's quite problematic, isn't it? And you kind of think, I'm not sure that he did it for the right reasons. It was obviously it was a selfish reason because he loved Kira, is why he did it, which it's beautiful at one level, but then he took that decision away from everyone else just because he loved Kira, which is also quite problematic. So I was watching it thinking, I think you said, Melissa, there's not a right or wrong answer to which decision they should have made, but I think the fact that he just made that, I like the way that it was quite problematic at the end with that decision, and it wasn't their decision and it's taken out of their hands. And I liked Kira's reaction to that, because she wasn't happy with it, because like you said, I think you would just feel so guilty if you think that 8,000 people cease to exist because if someone loved you. It's just, I don't know.
Well, I thought her reaction was interesting too, since the original decision was for them to leave. Yeah. And so really what happened is only what would have happened if they didn't change their mind collectively. And so, I thought the reaction to that was interesting. Like, how would she have reacted if Sisko was the one that made the final call and said, we're leaving, and Odo had nothing to do with it? Would she be upset with Sisko for ending 8,000 lives?
Interesting.
So that's an interesting thought puzzle also.
It also tells me that she's going to be a lot more picky when guys are flirting with her, you know? She's going to be like what they're going to say, like, I love you. I want to take you out to a ractigino and salad. And she'll be like, you wouldn't even kill 8,000 of your friends for me.
No, it was more about the kiss.
Like, you wouldn't even kill five friends.
It's not Odo. It's not like he's a stranger.
It was weird because they left it in a position where Odo was having to defend future Odo at the end. He was like, I think it was the right decision. And they left it on an awkward note where it's like, it's like, I have these feelings for you. My future self told you about it. I kind of agree with him and whatever he did, because now we get to explore our relationship. But now she's like a little turned off because she wasn't like receptive to him. Like, oh yes, let's start our life together. It's so amazing, how romantic. It was more like we killed 8,000 people and like
for you.
And he's like, for you.
Yeah, well, we only have a minute left, but let's ask
an instant win for a Klingon.
Yeah, let's ask the ladies. Melissa, Anne-Marie, and Eve. Is that a good move? Would you be like, is that a plus or a minus if a dude kills 8,000 people for you?
It depends the context.
Is it romantic?
Oh, I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. I mean, you can't blame present Odo for the actions of future Odo. And it's not fair to hold present Odo accountable for that choice because he did not make that choice. And you know, it's not something where it's like, well, you killed 8,000 people. That Odo didn't kill 8,000 people for her.
No, I think you're right, and I think they probably wouldn't have got together had it not been the other. If it had been the other way around, yeah, I don't think it would, because that's just creepy and it's just. I don't think you could live this out of it. It would just feel horrible. Whereas, like you said, I think it just. She was just so confused. I mean, she had so much to take in this whole episode.
Yeah.
She knew she was going to die at the start, so that's pretty traumatic anyway. And then she realizes that, you know, she's got a second chance because of something future Odo did. So it's just really complex on so many levels. It's just, I think the more I watch this episode, the more I like it. It's just, you start asking different questions.
Well, Anne-Marie disagrees with both of you. She thinks it's super romantic.
Well, it's like after I watch it more and more too, it starts crossing my mind how Odo actually did everybody a favor, because he took, I mean, I'm not condoning anything one way or the other. It's a little bit like Tuvix, but at the end, they restored the timeline. And what about like people like Hiroyoshi who wouldn't have been born yet if they didn't return? Also, it kind of took the pressure and the guilt that the whole crew would have had, like making the decision themselves. It helped either way. They would have had that the rest of their lives. And actually, I mean, we kind of know that Odo mostly did it for Kira, but to everybody else, it would seem like Odo also did it for them. At least that would cross my mind, and how in a weird way, I'm a little bit grateful.
Yeah. Otherwise, the show would be over. So, speaking of which, our show must be over now. But we do want to give a very special thanks to Mr. Ethan Calk for calling in all the way out in San Antonio, Texas. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And special thanks to Eve, TJ, Melissa, Rex, and Anne-Marie for joining in the fun. For Cirroc, Lofton, and myself, and the coolest guy ever, Aaron Eisenberg. My name is Ryan T. Husk, and always remember the 7th rule.